Yes, Itachi? This power is similar to Kushina Uzumaki's, given by our honorable ancestor. The power of the Shadow Monarch, Naruto says, his expression serious and almost regal with his eyes glowing to meet Itachi's Sharingan gaze. The declaration hangs in the air and heavy with implications as the bridge, once filled with the sounds of seagulls and crashing waves, is now eerily silent. Kisame's hand tightens on the hilt of his wrapped sword. Shadow Monarch, huh? Sounds fancy? But fancy titles don't mean much in a real fight, he says, his sharp teeth bared in a mix of excitement and apprehension. Naruto's lips curl into a small but knowing smile. Perhaps, but I think you'll find that this particular title comes with some very real power, he says, turning his attention back to Itachi. The path you've chosen is not an easy one, Itachi, Makoto says, and she could see a flicker of regret or curiosity in her son's eyes. Indeed, you slaughtered clan, and now you want to hunt me down. Why? Naruto asks, his voice tinged with genuine curiosity. For a moment, it seems as if Itachi might actually respond, might reveal something of his true motives.
It is something you will not understand, Itachi says, his eyes hardening.
Perhaps, but I can't let you take me, Naruto says, his arms folded and his legs crossed. The tension on the bridge is thick enough to cut with a kunai as Kisame's shark-like grin widens, his beady eyes glinting with bloodlust. Itachi's Sharingan spins lazily and ready to trap Naruto in a genjutsu at a moment's notice. Naruto is casually perched on Greed's back and raises his hand with a smirk. Oh, I almost forgot. I've got a few more friends I'd like you to meet, Naruto, said, his tone light despite the heavy atmosphere. More tricks up your sleeve, Kisame says, pointing his sword Samehada. You could say that. First up is the Sanbai Asobu, Naruto says, his grin growing wider. The water to their right begins to churn and bubble as the massive and shadowy form of Asobu bursts from the waves. 3 shrimp-like tails whipping through the air and visible eye locked on the 2 Akatsuki members. Well, I'll be damned, Kisame mutters, his eyes widening a little. Next is something I picked up recently here in Wave, Naruto says, uncrossing his legs and pointing left. The left side of the bridge suddenly erupt in a tangle of writhing tentacles to grab the bridge, as the rest twist and curl in the air, its gelatinous form dripping from its breaching. Meet Krathok, Naruto explained casually, as if discussing the weather. You've indeed inherited Lady Kushina's power, Itachi says, his Sharingan Tamu spinning. Last but not least is Inari, otherwise known as the Kyuubi no Yoko, Naruto says, his haunting now glowing brighter, and Inari appears behind Naruto, but is horse-sized with 9 swishing tails. There are more, but this should suffice. Now shall we dance, Naruto says, preparing to bring out Inari's fangs. Kisame's grin widens with his sharp teeth glinting in the fading light, and grips Samehada, readying to shave off Naruto's limbs. But Itachi's left arm shoots out to block him. We're leaving, Itachi said, his voice calm but firm. What? But we just got to the good part, Kisame says, looking to Itachi with disbelief etched on his face. Itachi's eyes were still swirling with the Sharingan, and never leave Naruto's glowing orbs. We're not prepared to face him. His shadow soldiers are nearly equal to their strength when they were alive. He has the Kyuubi and Sanbai under his control. We can't beat both, he continues, his tone leaving no room for argument. You would be correct, Itachi, Naruto says, glancing between the members of his army. Come on, Itachi. We can take him, Kisame growls, his frustration evident. No, Kisame, this isn't a fight we can win today. We need to report this to leader. The situation has changed, Itachi says, shaking his head and his voice lowering a bit. Smart move, Itachi. Always the strategist, Naruto says with a tilt of his head and his hidden in shadow as his glow orbs were visible. This isn't over, Naruto. We'll meet again, Itachi says, his gaze returning to Naruto and something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Looking forward to it, Naruto replies, his tone light but his eyes sharp. Itachi, be safe, my son, Makoto says, as Itachi and Kisame begin to back away with her voice filled by a mother's longing. Itachi's mask slips for a moment once again, revealing a flash of pain and regret, but as quickly as it appears, vanishes. Itachi vanishes into a murder of crows with one last look at his mother, and Kisame reluctantly follows suit into a swirl of mist. Well, that was an experience, Naruto says, letting out a low whistle and rises to his feet. Naruto, this changes things. The Akatsuki now know they might not be able to capture Inari, or Isabu. Makoto said softly, her glowing eyes filled with concern. Yeah, we'll need to ready, Naruto says, running a hand through his messy blonde hair. We should have fought them, Inari grumbles, its tail swishing in agitation and letting out a low growl that sounds suspiciously like a scoff. Maybe, but let's not play all our cards, Naruto says, his eyes glancing to Krathok, and the octopus moves its tentacles. Indeed. Discretion is sometimes the better part of valor, Isabu says, his voice rumbling and his tails moving. Naruto nods with his expression turning serious. For now, we need to be careful. Itachi? He's not the type to act without reason. There must be someone pulling the strings. Someone powerful enough to keep even Kisame in line, he said, his voice low and thoughtful. Itachi is working for someone, Makoto says, concern evident for her son. It's the only thing that makes sense. Itachi's too smart to just follow orders blindly in Kisame. Well, he's not exactly known for his restraint. For them to work together, to be part of this organization, there has to be someone or something bigger at play, Naruto replies, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then we need to be prepared, and perhaps we should inform the Sandaime about this, Makoto says, her eyes reflecting a mix of worry and determination. A group with red clouds, Naruto muses, and is not keen on talking to the Sandaime as the man doesn't have his best interests in mind. I'll think about it, he adds, dismissing his soldiers one by one. He pulls out another cigarette and lights it with a Zippo with a small drag. Konoha? I'm eager to see you, my beauties, Naruto murmurs, exhaling a plume of smoke. With a last glance at the now calm waters, does Naruto set off, his footsteps echoing on the bridge as he walks, each step taking him closer to Konoha and the challenges that awaited him there. Renentan. The journey back to is uneventful, and giving Naruto time to mull over his encounter with Itachi and Kisame. The sun begins to dip below the horizon while painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, with the massive gates of Konoha coming into view. Naruto approaches the entrance and his eyes scan the familiar guard shack, seeing Kotetsu and Izumo hunched over a small table and deeply engrossed in a game of cards. Evening, fellows. Still guarding the gates with your lives, Naruto calls out, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Hey, Naruto, back from Wave, Kotetsu says, looking up and a small smile on his lips. You know the drill, Naruto. Sign in, please, Izumo chimes in, not taking his eyes off his cards. Naruto nods while stepping forward to scribble his name on the visitor's log. He gives the pair a friendly wave as he strolls into village, but both guards exchange looks between themselves before going back to their card game. The streets of Konoha were bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, casting long shadows across the familiar buildings. But he notices the whispers. The demon has indeed returned. I thought we were free of him, an older woman mutters, her eyes narrowing as Naruto walks by. Shh, not so loud. You know what they say about him now. He has the favor of the daimyo, her companion hisses, casting a nervous glance at Naruto. Naruto keeps his face impassive but inwardly sighs as it seems the council had been busy in his absence. Danzo, his fellow elders, merchant heads and clan heads have been spreading his return, playing on the villagers' old fears and prejudices. As he continues through the village, the whispers follow him, with some being fearful, others filled with barely concealed hostility, but a few seem more curious than afraid, eyeing him with a mix of awe and uncertainty, as perhaps his good deeds have spread. Naruto quickens his pace to head towards the Hokage Tower. He needed to catch the Hokage before he left for the night, but as he approaches the tower, sees the Sandaime exiting the building with his traditional robes billowing slightly in the evening breeze. Naruto Hiruzen calls out, his voice warm and welcoming. "I wanted to catch you before left. I needed to discuss something with you," Naruto says, studying the Hokage's face. "I see. Did the extra day help you?" Hiruzen says, his brow furrowed slightly. "It did. I wanted to make sure there were no more pirates lurking around," Naruto confirms, his voice taking on a more serious tone. The Hokage nods approval, clear in his eyes, but there is something else there too, a hesitation that Naruto couldn't quite place. "Something on your mind?" Naruto asks, his piercing gaze fixed on Hiruzen. "Naruto, about what you said to Team 7, Hiruzen says with a sigh, his shoulders sagging slightly. "I'm not taking back my words. If that's what you're asking, they needed to hear it." Hokage-sama, Naruto says with his eyes hardened, his posture straightening. "I understand, Naruto, but perhaps the manner in which," Hiruzen says and raises a hand, a placating gesture. "No, with all due respect, they need to hear it from someone who's lived in the world, and not behind Konoha's walls. The life of a shinobi isn't a game, and they need to understand that." Naruto interrupts, his voice firm but trying to be respectful. The Hokage studies Naruto for a long moment and his eyes searching. "You've grown, Naruto." "In more ways than one, it seems," Hiruzen says, a mix of pride and sadness in his expression. "The world doesn't wait for us to grow up. Sometimes we have to catch up to it," Naruto says, his stance relaxing slightly, but his eyes remaining serious. "I see. Since you've returned, would you care to join me for some tea?" Hiruzen says with a smile, and trying to get back on the blonde's good side. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid I'll have to pass. I want to see Mei and Tenta," Naruto says curtly, his glancing in the direction of the Senju compound. "Of course, Naruto. I won't keep you," Hiruzen says, his face one of understanding. Naruto turns to leave but then pauses. "Oh, there is one more thing. On my way back, I encountered Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hashigaki," he said, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. "What? What happened?" Hiruzen says, his eyes widening and his posture stiffening. "I'm fine. I managed to chase them off by showing some of my army," Naruto says, a hint of pride in his voice. "I see. Then you should know. Itachi is part of a group called Akatsuki. Their goal, as far as we know, is to capture the Biju," Hiruzen said slowly, with brow furrowed deeply, and his eyes clouding in concern. "I'll contact Jiraiya. He has some information that might be useful in this situation," Hiruzen adds, his tone grave. Naruto keeps his mouth shut as Jiraiya is on his kill list, but he'll be civil to quell his suspicions about Akatsuki, and gives the Hokage a curt nod. "Be careful, Naruto. These are dangerous times," Hiruzen says, reaching out and placing a weathered hand on Naruto's shoulder. "I always am," Naruto says, and meets the Hokage's gaze. "Good evening, Hokage-sama," he said over his shoulder after turning to leave, vanishing into an unkindness of ravens, and heading for the Senju compound. The evening air is cool against his face as he reforms in the forest of the Senju compound, his footsteps barely disturbing the undergrowth. The trees here were old and thick, their branches intertwining to create a natural canopy that filter the fading sunlight. He moves deeper into the woods with the sounds of the village faded away, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a nightbird. "I know you hate Jiraiya, and I understand your desire to address his possible actions regarding Uzushio. But his information could be useful," Makoto's voice whispers from his shadow, her tone cautious and gentle. "I'll be good, but if he pushes me," Naruto replies, his voice low and controlled. He takes a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. Chibi Makoto's ethereal form shimmers into existence in front of him. "I know, Naruto, just be careful," she says, her expression one of concern and understanding. "You're right as always," Naruto said, his posture relaxing slightly. Naruto makes his way through the dense foliage towards the Senju Manor and reaches it, slipping inside and taking off his boots. A faint sound of laughter reaches his ears and his eyebrows raise in curiosity before following the sound of merriment. He nears the living room with the laughter growing louder, punctuated by the distinct clink of sake cups. He pauses at the doorway and takes in the scene before him. Tenten, Mei, and Tsunade were seated comfortably around a low table, several bottles of sake scattered between them. Tsunade's cheeks were flush from the alcohol, and is in the middle of regaling the younger women with what seems to be a particularly amusing story. Tsunade's sharp eyes immediately lock onto him. "Finally back, brat," she calls out, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "Yeah, I wanted to stay and wave another day. Plus I needed a day away from Team 7 Naruto," replies, running a hand through his messy blonde hair. "I bet," Mei said, her lips curling into a knowing smirk, and her voice tinged with understanding. Tenten gets to her feet as she crosses the room in quick strides and wraps her arms around him in a tight embrace. Naruto returns the hug while breathing in her familiar scent of steel and cherry blossoms.
"Welcome home," Tenten murmurs into his chest, her voice muffled but filled with warmth. Naruto pulls back slightly and looking down at her with a soft smile. "It's good to be back," he said, his voice low and sincere.
"Well, don't just stand there. Sit down and tell us about your mission. And pour yourself some sake while you're at it," Tsunade said with a clearing of her throat, gesturing to an empty cushion. Naruto chuckles while moving to join them at the table to settle down between Tenten and Mei, with the latter leaned in, her breath tickling his ear.
"We've missed you," Mei whispers, her voice carrying her affection for him. Naruto feels a warmth spread through his chest that has nothing to do with the sake Tsunade is now pouring for him. "So, how was Wave?" Tsunade said, leaning forward with interest gleaming in her eyes. Naruto takes a sip of sake, savoring the warmth as it spreads through his chest.
"Well, it all started on the way to Wave. We hadn't even made it out of Fire Country when we ran into trouble. The Demon Brothers decided to pay us a visit," Naruto said, his eyes distant with memory. "Those Kiri missing nin," Tsunade says with a sip of sake. "The very same. They thought they were being clever by hiding in a puddle on a sunny day," Naruto says with a shake of his head. "What happened, Tenten?" asks, leaning forward with interest. "I made short work of them. I used ruler's authority and killed them and added them to my army," Naruto replies with a shrug, his eyes glowing faintly. "Impressive, but I'm guessing that wasn't the end of your troubles," Tsunade says with a low whistle. "Far from it. Turns out the brothers were hired by a pirate named Kree. He and Ship were terrorizing Wave," Naruto said, his expression darkening slightly. Real pirate?" Tenten's brow furrowed, and a hint of excitement in her voice. "Yeah. When we got to Wave, I asked around about him and soon dealt with him. Him and his crew now a part of my army," Naruto explains with another bump of sake, "but honestly, dealing with Krieg was almost easier than putting up with Team 7, he says, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Let me guess. That pink hair girl," Mei says, a knowing smirk on her face.
"Got it in one. The entire time she wouldn't stop screeching at me about getting Sasuke to join the Gote 13. As if I'd want that brooding idiot anywhere near our organization," Naruto says with a groan, running a hand through his hair.
"That girl needs to get her priorities straight. And what about the Uchiha Tsunade?" says with a snort. "Sasuke. He spent half the mission trying to talk down to me, acting like he knew better than everyone else. I stayed calm as I didn't want to tarnish Lord Ieyasu, but I swear, if I didn't, his Sharingan would be lodged firmly up his..." Naruto says, his eyes flashing with irritation. Naruto, Tenten cuts in, her tone gently chiding despite the amusement in her eyes. Sorry, it's just frustrating. They have no idea what the real world is like, and they don't seem interested in learning either, Naruto says, taking a deep breath and calming himself. The room falls silent for a moment, but Tsunade finally breaks the silence by refilling Naruto's cup. Well, sounds like you had quite the adventure, and it seems like you handled it well. But remember, not everyone has seen what you've seen or done what you've done. Sometimes patience is the hardest skill to master, Tsunade said, her voice carrying a mix of pride and concern. Yeah, there's actually more to the story. The Wave Daimyo was being pretty shady. So I decided to give her a little scare as Wave's cage, Figured it might help keep things in line there for a while, Naruto said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. And how did that go, Tsunade says, her eyes narrowing and swirling her sake cup. Let's just say she'll think twice before trying to take advantage of her people. Again, Naruto muses with a faint smirk on his lips. Clever, May murmurs, a hint of approval in her voice. But that's not all. On my way back, I ran into Itachi Uchiha. Turns out he's part of a group called Akatsuki. The Hokage filled me on that when I got back, Naruto says, his expression sobering. Akatsuki. That's not good. What do you want to do about this, Tsunade repeats, her voice low. For now, we focus on what's right in front of us. We've got our time in Konoha until the Chunin exams in 6 months to deal with. That's where our attention needs to be, Naruto says, after taking a deep breath and downing more sake. Speaking of which, how did Team 8 and 10 fare while I was gone, Naruto asks, his gaze sweeping across the room. Tenten sits up straighter and eager to share her observations. Both teams are very group-oriented, which has its pros and cons. Team 8 especially seems to work well together, but, she said, choosing her words carefully. But Naruto prompts, holding out his sake cup. Well, there's this girl named Yakumo Kurama. She's got some unique abilities. I think she might be worth keeping an eye on, Ten explains, her eyes lighting up with interest. As for Team 10, it's much the same story. The Ino-Shika-Cho combination is skilled, no doubt about it. But they're almost too reliant on each other. I can't help but wonder how any of them would fare if separated from the group, May says, adding her own observations. Naruto listens intently, and his brow furrowed in thought. I see. It sounds like we've got our work cut out for us, he said, his voice low and contemplative. You know, it might be worth checking out some of the older ninja too. Get a feel for the overall state of Konoha's forces, Tsunade says, her amber eyes glinting with an idea. That's not a bad idea. And speaking of teams, I was wondering if you could do me a favor, Naruto agrees, nodding slowly and looking to Tsunade. Oh, and what might that be, Tsunade? Says while raising an eyebrow. I was hoping you could check out Team 7 for me. That way, I don't have to put up with them, Naruto said, a hint of relief in his voice. Alright, I'll keep an eye on them for you. As for older ninja, I have 2 in mind, Tsunade says, shaking her head in amusement concerning Team 7. Thanks. I appreciate it, Naruto says and gets to his feet. If you'll excuse me, I think I'll go take a shower, he adds, stretching and his muscles aching from the long journey. May and Tenten exchanged glances as Naruto leaves the room, a mix of concern and affection in their eyes. Tsunade notices the exchange and takes a long swig of sake before addressing the 2 younger women. He's back. Don't lose your courage now. You wanted to be with him intimately when he returned, Tsunade said, her voice carrying a note of pride tinged with amusement. Tenten's cheeks flush a bright red at Tsunade's blunt words. She reaches for a sake cup with slightly trembling hands, downing it in one swift gulp. The alcohol burns pleasantly as Goze went down, giving her a boost of liquid courage.
Why yeah, Tenten stutters, getting to her feet. Her heart is racing with a mix of nervousness and excitement coursing through her veins. Mei follows suit and rises gracefully from her seat. Her cheeks were also tinged pink, though whether from the sake or the implication of Tsunade's words was hard to tell. She places a reassuring hand on Tenten's shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. As the two young women make their way towards the door, don't forget to put up a silencing seal. Tsunade calls out, her voice a mix of amusement and concern. Both Tenten and Mei freeze in their tracks, their blushes deepening to a brilliant crimson. They exchange a quick glance, a silent conversation passing between them.
All right, thanks for the reminder. Tsunade-sama Tenten manages to stammer out, her voice barely above a whisper. Mei is more composed, and manages a small nod. We'll keep that in mind, she said, her voice steady despite the fierce blush on her face. As they hurry out of the room, does Tsunade chuckle to herself and shaking her head? Ah, young love. Naruto, you are one lucky brat, she murmurs, pouring herself another cup of sake. Speaking. Summon. Bijou. Shadow Soldier. Yi pause. Long pause. Yang Hanung. Disclaimer. I own nothing. Chappie 8. Land of Fire. Konohagakure no Sato. The next morning, Naruto leaves the Senju compound with his steps light and energetic. The morning air is crisp and invigorating and carrying the promise of a new day. He walks through the streets of Konoha with his mind turning to the task at hand of meeting Yakumo of Team 8, possibly recruiting her for the Gotei 13. He wears casual attire of jeans and a polo shirt, with his lightning storm hoodie draped over it. It wasn't long before he spots a familiar group in the distance, consisting of Yakumo Kiba with his Ninka Nakamaru and Shino were gathered near the training grounds. Kurenai stands nearby with her crimson eyes watchful as she observes her students, and she notices the blonde approaching. His casual attire a stark contrast to the ninja gear worn by Team 8. Kiba is the first to notice him and his enhanced senses picking up Naruto's scent, with a smirk crossing the Inuzuka's face as he turns to face the approaching figure. Well, look who it is. If it isn't the dead last himself, Kiba calls out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Naruto's expression remains neutral and walks past the boisterous ninja with his eyes fixed on the team's sensei. Kurenai, Yuhi, I presume. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto said, extending his hand in greeting. Kurenai's crimson eyes widen slightly in surprise, but she quickly regains her composure. The pleasure is mine, Naruto. I've heard a bit about you, she says, shaking Naruto's hand. All good, I hope. Now you've been working with Tenten, and she's had some interesting things to say about your team. Particularly about one of your genin, Naruto says with a soft smile. And at this, Kiba's ears perks up and his chest puffs out slightly while shooting a smug look at his teammates, clearly believing himself to be the subject of praise. Shino remains stoic as ever while Yakumo looks on with curiosity, and Kurenai quirks an eyebrow. And who might that be, Kurenai says with interest, piqued.
Well, it's obvious, Kurenai-sensei. I mean, who else could it be but the strongest member of Team 8? Kiba says before Naruto could respond, a cocky grin on his face. Naruto's eyes flick briefly to Kiba but then back to Kurenai as the team is in suspense about who this mysterious praise is actually meant for. Actually, I was referring to Yakumo Kurama. Her skills in Genjutsu are truly remarkable, Naruto said, his gaze settling on Yakumo. A hush falls over the group as Kiba's cocky grin falters, his face flushing with embarrassment. Shino remains impassive but a slight tilt of his head suggests interest. Yakumo looks genuinely surprised with her eyes widening as she processed Naruto's words.
And me, Yakumo stammers out, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Indeed. Your ability to create and manipulate illusions is far beyond what one would expect from a genin. It's quite impressive, Naruto says, a warm smile spreading across his face. Yakumo has shown exceptional talent in Genjutsu. Her progress has been remarkable, Kurenai says, and couldn't hide the pride in her voice.
Tenten saw that. In fact, that's part of the reason I'm here today, Yakumo. I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you, Naruto says, his eyes never leaving Yakumo.
What kind of opportunity? Yakumo asks, a mix of curiosity and apprehension evident in her expression. One that could help you further develop your talents and put them to good use. But perhaps we could discuss this in more detail after your training session, Naruto says, his smile widening slightly. Of course, we were just wrapping up for the day. Yakumo, why don't you stay behind and hear what Naruto has to say? Kurenai says, her curiosity piqued. The rest of Team 8 begin to disperse, with Kiba shooting a jealous glance over his shoulder, clearly miffed at not being the center of attention. Shino simply nods to Yakumo before departing with his expression unreadable as always. I'm listening, Naruto. What exactly did you have in mind? Tenten told me about the Gotai, Yakumo says, her initial nervousness giving way to a determined look. Yeah? We're searching for 3 members among Konoha's ninja forces, Naruto says, his hands in the pockets of his hoodie. Yes? Yakumo says, her eyes flickering in recognition. That's why I'm here today. We decided to switch things up, and I want to see how well you work away from your team, Naruto says, his hair blowing in a breeze.
But, my physical limitations. Won't that be a problem? Yakumo says with her brow furrowed slightly, a mix of excitement and concern crossing her face.
I know you still have physical limitations, Yakumo, but don't worry about that. Tsunade is willing to help in that regard, Naruto says, his voice reassuring. Really? Lady Tsunade herself would help me, Yakumo says, her eyes lighting up at this revelation. Absolutely. Your genjutsu skills are exceptional, and with some work on your physical condition, you could become an incredibly well-rounded ninja, Naruto confirms. Rolling on his heels? Yakumo seems to consider this for a moment. What would joining the Gote entail? Would I have to leave Konoha, she asks, her fingers absently playing with the hem of her sleeve.
Yes, you would. The Gote 13 is primarily stationed in the capital. You'd be undertaking missions directly for the Fire Lord, Naruto says with a nod, his expression turning a bit more serious.
The capital, and missions for the Fire Lord himself, Yakumo says, a mix of excitement and apprehension flickering across her face. That's right, but don't worry. In fact, you'd be given traveling rights similar to the Sana, Naruto says, a reassuring smile returning to his face. Traveling rights? What do you mean, Yakumo says, her brow furrowed slightly. It means you'd have the freedom to move between villages and countries with much less restriction than regular shinobi. You'd be something of a diplomat as well as a ninja, Naruto explains, his posture relaxed as he leans against a nearby tree. That sounds incredible. But what about my clan and my team here in Konoha if I take this offer, Yakumo says with a spark of interest.
I won't lie to you, Yakumo. It would be a big change. You'd still be able to visit Konoha, but your primary work would be to the Gote 13 and the Fire Lord, Naruto says with his expression softening and somewhat understanding the weight of her concerns. As for your clan, this could be an opportunity to bring honor to the Kurama name. Your unique talents would be recognized and utilized on a much larger scale, he adds, letting his words sink in. Yakumo takes a deep breath and her eyes meeting Naruto's with a newfound determination. I have a lot to think about it. It's a big decision, but it seems like an incredible opportunity. So I'll speak to my parents and grandfather, she says, a small smile forming on her lips. That's great, Yakumo. I'm glad you're interested, but take your time. We'll be here until the Chunin exams in a few months. You can give your decision then, Naruto says, clearly pleased with her response.
The Chunin exams. But that's... Yakumo says with her eyes widening slightly.
A perfect opportunity to showcase your skills. We're considering many talented ninja from Konoha, and the exams will give us a chance to see every genin in action, Naruto finishes for her, his blue eyes twinkling. I understand. I'll do my best, Yakumo says with a nod and a determined look settling on her face.
I'll be keeping an eye on your progress, along with the other potential candidates. Don't be surprised if you see me May. Tenten or Senade observing through the coming months, Naruto says, adjusting his lightning storm hood and extends his hand. Yakumo shakes his hand as her eyes shine with a mix of excitement and determination. Naruto turns to leave with a nod and a wave to head to next candidate. Someone he remembers very well. Yuenenhan. Naruto makes his way through the village with his feet carrying him towards the imposing structure of the torture and interrogation building. The tea department has always been a place that inspires a mix of fear and respect among the villagers. He pushes open the heavy doors and steps into the cool but dimly lit interior. There is an actual receptionist at the front desk that look up, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. "I'm here to see Anko Mitarashi," Naruto states, his voice calm and confident. Third door on the left. She should be finishing up an interrogation session soon, the receptionist says, quickly checking a schedule before pointing down a corridor. Naruto thanks her and makes his way down the hallway, his footsteps echoing off the bare walls. He nears the designated room but could hear muffled voices from within. He leans against the wall opposite the door and decides to wait until Anko is finished. A few minutes later, the door swings open as out steps Anko. Her trench coat swirls around her as she exits with a satisfied smirk playing on her lips, but spots Naruto, her eyebrows rising in surprise, but her smirk only widens. "Well, what brings you here?" "Naruto Uzumaki, or you prefer Phantom," Anko drawls out, her voice laced with amusement. "I take it you've read my file," Naruto says, pushing off the wall and meeting Anko's gaze steadily. "Oh honey, I've done more than just read it. Your bingo book entry is quite the resume. Not many can claim to have killed a Baju," Anko says with her smirk turning into a full-blown grin. "That's true," Naruto says, his expression serious, but with a hint of pride in his eyes.
"Follow me to my office. We can chat more privately there," Anko says, her eyes gleaming with interest as she looks Naruto up and down and jerks her head towards the end of the corridor. Anko turns on her heel without waiting for a response and strides down the hallway, her coat billowing behind her. Naruto falls into step beside her and matching her brisk pace, but as they walk, getting curious glances of other tea personnel they pass. They reach a door at the end of the hallway that is marked simply with her name. "After you," she said after opening the door into a mock flourish, her tone somewhere between teasing and challenging. Naruto steps into the office with his eyes quickly taking in the sparse but functional space. A desk dominates the room, covered in stacks of files and what looks suspiciously like dango sticks. The walls were bare except for a couple of wanted posters and a dartboard that has clearly seen better days.
"She hasn't changed at all," Makoto says from his shadow. Anko closes the door behind them, and the soft click seems to signal the start of a new, more serious conversation. She moves around to sit behind her desk, leaning back in her chair and fixing Naruto with an intense gaze. "So, what exactly does this Gotti 13 want with a sexy snake like me?" Anko begins, her voice losing some of its earlier playfulness. "What the Gotti 13 wants is to offer you an opportunity, Anko. An opportunity that I believe you've been denied for far too long," Naruto replies, his voice clear and confident. "Oh, and what makes you think I need any opportunities?" Anko says, her eyes narrowing slightly with a mix of curiosity and suspicion flickering across her face. "Because you're stifled here, Anko. Konoha's ruling body. They still see you as his student," Naruto says, meeting her gaze steadily. The words hang in the air between them and heavy with unspoken implications as Anko's face hardens for a moment, a flash of old pain and anger crossing her features before she quickly masks it. "And what makes you think that bothers me? I've made a name for myself here. I'm respected and feared," even Anko shot back, her voice taking on a defensive edge.
"You have, and rightfully so. Your skills are impressive, Anko. But tell me, when was the last time you were sent on a high-profile mission outside the village? When was the last time your talents were truly put to the test?" Naruto says, acknowledging her words. Anko's silence is telling as her fingers drum a restless rhythm on her desk as she considers Naruto's words.
"The Gotti 13 doesn't care about your past associations. We see you for who you are now, a skilled kunoichi with unique abilities and a wealth of experience. We're offering you a chance to step out of the shadow of your former sensei and truly shine on your own merits. Naruto continues, his voice softening slightly.
And what exactly would this opportunity entail? I'm not exactly the type to play nice with others, Anko says, her eyes never leaving Naruto's face.
We're not looking for someone to play nice, Anko. We're looking for someone who can get results. Your expertise in interrogation, your combat skills, your knowledge of forbidden techniques. These are all valuable assets, Naruto says with a faint smile tugging at his lips. You'd have the freedom to operate on a larger scale, to take on missions that truly challenge your abilities. And yes, you'd be working as part of a team, but one that respects your skills and your autonomy, he adds, letting his words sink in. And what about my loyalties to Konoha? I may have my issues with some people here, but this is still my village, Anko says with her expression remaining guarded, but there is a glimmer of interest in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Your loyalty to Konoha wouldn't be in question. The Gaudy 13 operates under the Fire Lord's authority, working for the benefit of the entire Fire Country. You'd still be serving Konoha, but just on a broader scale, Naruto says and understands her concern. Mind if I smoke, he asks, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a sleek cigarette pack. Go ahead. This place has seen worse than a little smoke, Anko says, waving her hand dismissively. Naruto places a cigarette between his lips and flicks open a worn Zippo lighter with a nod of thanks as he lights up, taking a deep drag before exhaling a stream of smoke towards the ceiling. You know, during my journey, I spent some time on Uzushio. Learned a few interesting tricks there, Naruto begin with his voice, slightly rougher from the smoke. Oh, and what kind of tricks might those be, Anko asks, her eyebrow quirking up, her interest piqued despite herself. Naruto's lips curve into a small but knowing smile. Well, for one, I picked up a technique that might interest you personally, a method to remove that little gift your former sensei left you, he says, his eyes flicking briefly to the side of her neck, where her collar usually hides a certain mark. Anko's hand instinctively goes to her neck, her fingers brushing over the spot where the cursed seal lay hidden. Her eyes widen slightly with a mix of disbelief and hope flickering across her face before she quickly schools her features back into a neutral expression.
You're bluffing. That seal is unremovable. Even the best seal master in Konoha couldn't do anything about it, Anko said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice.
That's because they are not an Uzumaki, Anko. They had knowledge that even Konoha's best couldn't match. And I've had the privilege of learning some of their more obscure arts while on the island, Naruto says, taking another drag from his cigarette and the ember at the tip glowing brightly for a moment. Anko stares at the blonde before her as shadow hide his face, but leave two glowing orbs. I'm not saying it would be easy or painless, but it's possible, and it's something I'd be willing to help you with. Whether you join the Gaudy 13 or not, Naruto says, leaning forward with his voice low and earnest. And what would you want in return? Anko asks, her voice guarded, but with an undercurrent of curiosity as the room goes quiet. What I want is for you to consider joining the Gaudy 13. But not just as a favor to me, or because of what I'm offering. I want you to join because you see the potential in it, Anko. The chance to redefine yourself, to step out of the shadows and into a role where your skills are truly valued. Naruto begins finally with his voice steady and sincere. Anko's eyes narrow slightly while searching Naruto's face for any sign of deception, but finds none as she leans forward, her elbows resting on her desk. And if I say no, Anko asks, her voice carrying a hint of challenge. Then you say no. As I said, the offer to remove the seal still stands. But I hope you'll at least think about it, Anko. Give yourself a chance to see what you could become without the weight of the past holding you back, Naruto replies and stubs his cigarette in a nearby ashtray. Take some time to consider it. Talk to Tsunade or Tenten if you want an insider's perspective. Find me at the Senju compound when you're ready. Whether it's to join us or just to have that seal removed, he adds, standing up and stretching slightly before meeting Anko's gaze once more. Anko remains silent for a moment with her fingers absently tracing the spot where her curse mark lay hidden, but soon nods, a hint of her usual smirk returning to her face. "I'll think about it. No promises, but I'll think about it," Anko said, her tone non-committal but with an undercurrent of genuine consideration. "I appreciate your consideration, Anko. Take all the time you need," Naruto says, turning to leave. Anko's eyes follow him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness in her gaze as he steps out of the office, closing the door behind him with a gentle click. The corridors of the tea department seem quieter now, the earlier bustle having died down. Naruto's footsteps echo off the bare walls as he makes his way towards the exit. A small figure materializes on top of his head as Chibi Amiyuri settles herself comfortably. "I like her." "You should sleep with her," Amiyuri declares, her miniature legs swinging back and forth. Naruto's steps falter for a moment while caught off guard by the blunt statement. He quickly regains his composure and continues his stride as he responded in a hushed tone. "Amiyuri? I'm here to recruit, not build some sort of personal harem," he murmurs, careful not to draw attention from the tea personnel still milling about. "Oh, come on. Did you see the way she was looking at you? Besides, mixing business with pleasure never hurt anyone," Amiyuri says, letting out a tinkling laugh. "It's more complicated than that," Amiyuri, Naruto says with a sigh, shaking his head slightly. They reach the building's exit and Naruto pushes open the heavy door, stepping out into the warm Konoha sun. Fine. But don't say I didn't give you good advice when you're lying with just Tenten and Mei in your bed tonight," Amiri says, crossing her tiny arms with a huff. "With just Tenten and Mei. Don't let them hear that," Naruto says with a chuckle, the sound barely audible over the bustle of the village. I know. I just wanted to mess with you a bit. So where are we heading now?" Amiri says, leaning forward and peering down at Naruto's face. "We're going to pay a certain elder a visit," Naruto says, his blue eyes glinting with a mix of determination and anticipation. "Ooh, sounds intriguing. Care to share more details?" Amiyuri says, her tiny form vibrating with excitement. "Let's just say it's time to have a chat with someone who thinks he controls the shadows," Naruto says, his steps becoming more purposeful as he navigates through the village streets. Music. Frankenstein's monster. X-Men First Class. Deep beneath the village's surface, another figure is on the move, in the dimly lit corridors of Ne's underground headquarters. Danzo walks along a narrow bridge with his cane tapping a steady rhythm against the stone floor. Flanking him on either side were two of his most trusted operatives of Torun, with his face hidden behind a mask and Fu, his eyes sharp and alert. The trio move in silence with their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Danzo's visible eye narrows as he contemplates his next move. "We have our leverage." Naruto's power makes him a formidable opponent, but his attachments, those could be his weakness, he muses, his voice barely audible. "Will we target one of the Kunoichi?" Lord Danzo Torune says, a rare sign of unease coming from the usually stoic shinobi. "Not target. Torun? Acquire. Having one of them in our custody would provide us with a means to control Naruto to ensure his cooperation," Danzo says, his gaze sharpening.
"Lord Danzo, kidnapping either of them would be a risky move. It could provoke retaliation not just from Naruto but from the Gote 13 and Lord," Fu says, his brow knitted together, but suddenly Danzo's shadow expands and pulls away from them. The three men instantly tense with their bodies coiling in readiness as they whirl around to face the unexpected intruder. That intruder being Naruto, standing at the intersection of the narrow bridges as his face is set in a mask of calmness.
"Good day, gentlemen. I hope I'm not interrupting anything too important," Naruto said, his voice echoing off the walls. "Uzumaki," Danzo says, his eye narrowed, but wonders how the blonde slipped inside. Numerous operatives emerge from the shadows, surrounding Naruto in a tight circle, their masks gleaming in the dim light, their bodies tense and ready for action. The air grows thick with tension as the standoff intensifies as Naruto's eyes scan the group, His posture relaxed despite being outnumbered, but completely ignores the threat posed by the Nei agents. I wouldn't be too concerned about my presence here, Danzo. What you should be worried about is even considering coming near Tenten or Mei Naruto, said, and his voice is calm. But carrying an undercurrent of ice, I overheard your little scheme. Let me make this perfectly clear. They are off limits. Any attempt to acquire them, as you so delicately put it, will be met with consequences you can't even begin to imagine, he adds, his eyes flashing dangerously. You threaten me, boy, Danzo says, signaling his operatives to hold their positions. I do. Your days of pulling strings from the shadows are coming to an end, Danzo Naruto said, his voice sharp. Fu and Torun exchange quick glances with their hands hovering near their weapons. The other Nei agents remain motionless while awaiting orders from their master. In a flash of movement that seemed to defy human speed, ebony and ivory materialize in his grasp, their polished surfaces gleaming in the dim light of the underground chamber. Before anyone could react, two sharp cracks echo through the cavern and are followed by pained cries. Fu and Torun crumple to the ground while clutching their shattered kneecap. Blood seeped through their fingers and stained the bridge beneath them. The other Nei agents tense and are ready to unleash on Naruto, but they hold their positions, unsure how to proceed in the face of such unexpected violence. Naruto stands unmoving with his blue eyes cold and unwavering. Both revolvers were now trained on Danzo, their barrels steady and unyielding. Consider this the only warning I intend to give Danzo. You don't rule the shadows anymore. I do, Naruto said, his voice low and dangerous, as his shadow writhes at his feet like a living entity. Danzo's visible eye narrows with his mind racing to find a way out of this precarious situation, but straightens his posture, attempting to regain some semblance of control. You're making a grave mistake, boy. I hold significant political influence in this village. One word from me and things could become very strained for the gaudy 13, Danzo said, his voice low and threatening. Naruto tilts his head slightly with a hint of amusement playing across his features. Are you the Hokage? Danzo Naruto asks, and his tone is deceptively casual, but Danzo remains silent. No, you're not. Your bootlicker's answer to Lord Ieyasu now. Your political influence. It's as hollow as your promises, he adds, a cold smile spreading across his face.